Good morning, class 11 students. This is the second part of the chapter. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. So, let's revise the portion we covered in the first video. We won't be discussing about the author as we have already discussed about him in the first video. So, you can always go back and check. So, let me just highlight the summary of the part we covered in the last video, in the last lecture. This chapter, we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. It revolves around a part of the round the world voyage, which is undertaken by James Cook and his family in a sailboat, and this boat is known as the Wave Walker. And what does this chapter holds for us? Actually, this chapter is, it shows that everything, and even when you face unfavorable circumstances, if you have support, or if you have each other's support, if you have support of your family, you can overcome any trouble, any hindrance and obstacles in your life, even if the death is at your doorstep, right? So this is I believe this is the theme of the chapter, that that optimism, determination and courage, it can help you endure and defeat any kind of difficulties. You can conquer any fear, any problem. All you have to do is stick together, support each other and trust each other, and have a faith in your family member and your friends and all. So what happened in the beginning of the chapter? James Cook, he is a 37-year-old businessman, and in July 1976, actually he intend to go around the world on a long sea journey, just like Captain James Cook, who went on the same voyage 200 years, right? 200 years ago, and now he wants to repeat it. He wants to break the record, right? So in July 1976, James Cook with his wife and along with his wife, 6-year-old son Jonathan and 7-year-old daughter Suzanne, they started their journey from Plymouth, England, right? And so they actually practiced before setting the sail. They practiced for 16 years and they prepared themselves for this journey, for this voyage. They improved their seafaring skills, right? And they even test their boat, Wave Walker, which is a 23-meter and 30-ton boat, and it is actually professionally built. It was professionally built, and it was professionally built, and also they tested it in the bad and the roughest weather. So the first part of their planned journey, they covered 150,000 kilometers, which actually passed pleasantly, right? And they were actually sailing down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. And when they were because they were about to reach the southern Indian Ocean, and southern Indian Ocean is considered to be the roughest seas in the world. So James Cook, he took 2 crewmen. One of them is American Larry Vigil, and the second one is Swiss Herb Siegler, right? So before heading east from Cape Town, they hired these 2 crewmen, right, so that they could actually face the problems. So when they set sail from Cape Town, the wind on the second day, the wind was blowing very, it was very strong, right? The gales and the windstorms, it continued for the next weeks. But but it was alarming, but it did not cause any trouble, right? So they were actually able to spend Christmas on December 25. And then when they covered 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town, the weather was very bad, right? And despite the bad weather, they celebrated Christmas. And when even on New Year's Day, they did not see any sign of improvement, and the weather actually turned from bad to worse, right? It worsened. So on 2nd January, the waves were gigantic. Now it's time for us to continue from the remaining portion. So let me just get the text where we are supposed to begin today. Okay, so I think we are supposed to start from this paragraph. And when they saw the weather was actually turning bad, right? They actually took a few precautions, right? They lashed everything, they tied everything, understand? They dropped the storm jib, so to minimize the damage, and they lashed a heavy rope in a loop across the stern, right, back part of the ship, and they fastened everything, right? Their life raft, their lifelines. They also put on oilskins and life jackets, right? And they prepared themselves for the worst case scenario. So the first indication of impending disaster came at 6 p.m. with an ominous silence, right? So 6 p.m. on 2nd January, ominous silence is quietness just before some dangerous happening, right? So 6 p.m. Impending means which is approaching, right? Coming soon. So at 6 p.m. they could actually see and sense the impending danger, the coming danger, within with quietness. And the wind dropped, and suddenly what happened? It stopped blowing, and sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar. An enormous cloud, enormous means huge, cloud towered aft of means behind, right? With the horror, I realized that it was not a cloud, but a wave like no other I had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest. What is frightful? Frightful is which is scary, and breaking means which has capability to to break everything. And crest is, have you seen the shape, the half shape of moon, right? So that's how the shape of the waves were, understand? Top of the wave overturning, in simple language we can say. So at 6 p.m. what happened, children? 6 p.m. They sense the indication of coming danger, right? And the wind stopped, and the sky, it grew dark, right? And they could hear loud roaring sound, and they could also, it was heard by them, right? And the narrator thought it was a cloud, but actually it was a gigantic wave with a gigantic wave with a with its top, its overturning top, understand? And it appeared vertical, and it was actually the twice the height of the other waves they faced, days ago. Yes, the roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up. I hope you're aware of the meaning of this term, because I have just mentioned it. Let me just remind you once again. Stern means the back part of the ship, right? The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it, but then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green. Torrent means the water in huge amount, right? The torrent of green water, green and white water broke over the ship. My head smashed into the wheel, and I was aware of flying overboard and sinking blue below the waves. I accepted my approaching death, and as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. Consciousness is awareness, and peaceful means when you don't feel anything, right? When you don't I mean, peaceful is a situation. Here it is a situation. It is actually the the closeness to death, right? Understand? Okay, so what happened? The gigantic wave, they actually hit them, right? The waves, they hit them. The wave hit the boat, and this huge explosion took place, and it also shook the deck, right? And the water, because the wave is very huge, so it means the water poured in, right? And the water poured into the boat, and narrator, he smashed his head against the wheel of the boat, and he was thrown into the sea, and the narrator thought he was going to die, right? He thought he was going to die, because he was losing his awareness, he was losing his consciousness, and it felt quite peaceful. It felt quite peaceful means maybe because he's unconscious, he's unaware, right? So he's likely to die. Let's see what happened. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water a few meters away. Wave Walker was near capsizing. Capsizing means sinking. Her mast almost horizontal. So mast is actually, in the first video we talk about mast. What is mast? It is actually, it's a pole, right, where the storm jib is attached, right? Okay, so what happened? Fortunately, the narrator, he did not die. His head popped out of the water, and he was a few meters away from the ship Wave Walker. And you are also remember, they they actually took the safety precautions beforehand, because he tied the rope, he tied the lifeline around his waist, right? And yes, he is also wearing the safety jackets, right? So it means he is going to survive, I believe. Then what happened? Then a wave hurled her upright, and then hurled her upright means the second wave again upright the ship, right? And now the ship was back, it was now intact, right? It was now in the same position. My lifeline jerked taut. Taut means which is tight, right? So I grabbed the guardrails and sailed through and into Wave Walker's main boom. So the narrator, because he was attached to the rope, he was attached to the to the lifeline, so he was able to he managed to get on the ship again. Understand? Subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll. My left ribs cracked, my mouth filled and with blood and broken teeth. Somehow I found the wheel lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. So what happened in this part, when he was actually trying to get on, to get back on his ship, Wave Walker. But what happened? A wave, it hurled it upright, and the narrator, the powerful wave, it tossed narrator onto the boat. And this whole thing caused him a lot of injuries. His left ribs cracked, and his mouth was filled with blood, right? And yes, he also lost a few teeth. Understand? But he's a brave man. As you can see that he is, he's so hurt, he has broken his teeth, he's bleeding, and even one of his bones is cracked, right? But still he did not lose his awareness. He found the wheel, right? he managed to find the wheel, and then he lined up the stern, the back part of the ship, for the next wave, right? He prepared the stern for the next part of the uh, so this is where, because that's how, and they have actually started, uh, you know uh, they are now facing the difficulties, and they are even, you could see that their bravery, their plan, and they are trying their determination to save themselves, and narrator's determination to save himself and his family member, right? Water, water everywhere. I could feel that the ship had water below, but I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate suddenly. And where are all the family members? They are actually below the deck, and the narrator, he could actually see that this that ship has a lot of water, right? It is sinking now, because every time wave comes, it brings a lot amount of water inside the ship. So he did not abandon, means to leave, he did not abandon the leave, because he's also supposed to investigate, right? So according to him, the important thing is to take care of the wheel, and so he did not went down below the deck to examine his family members, right? But what happened, let's find out. Suddenly, the front hatch is actually, the it's actually the door on the deck, right? And it's very unusual door. It's not like the door you have your home, right? It is actually the door that leads below the deck, right? It is called hatch. So the hatch was open, the hatch, it was thrown open, and Mary appeared. And who came out? It was his wife. It was James Cook's wife. And we are sinking, she screamed, the decks are smashed, we are full of water. And the first thing is, she announced that we are sinking, there is a lot of water. Take the wheel, I shouted as I scrambled for the hatch. So the narrator, without losing a second, because yes, it is important to take care of the wheel, but it is also important to save the ship, and to prevent the water coming in. Otherwise the ship will it will sink. He won't be able to manage, or he will not be able to control the wheel, right? So the now the priority is to prevent the water from coming inside, and to take care of the water that is already inside the ship. So he scrambled means ran. He ran for the hatch. Larry and Herb, so these are the two crew member. They hired before tackling the southern Indian Ocean, right? So they are also helpful. Larry and Herb were pumping like madmen. They were pumping like madmen means they were actually pumping the water out, because it is very important to to extract out the water which is inside the ship. So they were actually pumping them out, and but they also faced difficulty while pumping the water out. And what were the difficulties? Let's see. Broken timber hung at crazy angles. Broken timber means because of the damage, because of this impact, this explosion, the water was you could actually see the broken pieces of woods, timbers, right, everywhere. And the whole starboard side bulged inward. What starboard side means, it is actually the part of the ship, right? And it bulged inward means it actually happened because of the impact when the wave hit, right? What happened, the frame of the ship, at some point it was it bulged inwards, right? And there were clothes, crockery, charts, tins, toys sloshed about in deep water. So sloshed about in deep water, sloshed means they were moving noisily, right? So the water was full of debris. There were timbers, there were toys, there were crockery, there were charts and everything. So it means it is actually very difficult to pump out the water when you have so much so much debris in the water, right? I half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. So he's actually he's making his way to his children's cabin, right? And he had to swim and he had to crawl, because below the deck it is submerged. So these are all the list of difficulties and the obstacles that they are facing, right? So because the boat had been damaged so badly, what happened now? Let's find out. Are you all right? I asked. Yes, they answered from an upper bunk. Bunk is actually the bed, right? So he asked whether they were okay or not. So he got a response that yes, but my head hurts. I yes, they answered from an upper. They said that they were okay, but my head hurts a bit, said Sue, pointing to a big bump above her eyes. I had no time to worry about bump heads, right? So the children, they said they were okay, and the narrator noticed that Susan has something. Susan got hurt. His daughter got hurt. She had a big bump on her head, right? And to which he did not pay attention, because his father, because he's aware that the now the priority is to to keep to prevent the ship from sinking, right? And even the daughter is aware that the most important thing for to attend to is to ship and not her, right? So we see that that she is just, I don't, she is not a very mature, right? She's hardly 7 years old. Understand, she's 7 years old, and she understands that her father needs to be needs to be available to repair the damages and to prevent the ship from sinking. So that's how now you can see this is this is what the chapter talked about, and that is what the title of the chapter is trying to convey, that we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. So we can actually see that how everyone is working, how everyone is supporting each other, right? The crew members, without much ado, they started pumping out the water. Mary, she came out, she, without any if and but, she took the charge of the wheel, right? And Suzanne, she did not brag about her, she did not make a fuss of her wound, of her bump on head, right? So that's how they are supporting each other. So children, that's all for today's session. We will be continuing the remaining part of the chapter in the third part of the video. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. It's very important that you go through the text that we have just covered, and please, this chapter has lots of new and difficult words, so please go through them and understand them and use them in your daily life, and also make sentences, right? Thank you, everyone.